Chapter 5. I will do my best to be an authentic model. He pulled the car to the side of the road. He stepped out and motioned to the farmer working on his tractor. "Excuse me," the man called. "Could you tell me how to get to Dover?" "Sure," the farmer responded. "It's only 4 miles from here. Take the road for about a mile and you'll come to a crossroad. Make a left and that will take you directly into Dover." The man thanked the farmer as he climbed back into his car. As the car reached the crossroad, the man turned right. His wife said, "Henry, the farmer said to make a left, and you turned right." "I know, dear," the man replied, "but did you notice when he said left, he actually motioned right? Well, I've long learned that when a person's words contradict their actions, what they do is what they mean." The man and his wife turned right and drove straight to Dover. That's an old story, but it illustrates this point. We may try to teach our kids the right things by telling them what to do and think, but how we live our lives before them is what we are actually teaching them. Your kids are growing up in a culture that says that you can tell if something is true by whether or not it works. That may be faulty thinking, because actually we know that something is true if it is right. But the point is this generation wants to see things working before they embrace them. To them, seeing is believing. You can use that to your advantage by being a model before your kids. As they see you live a life of faithfulness, honesty, mercy, respect of others, fairness, justice, compassion, self-control, and so on, they will be far more apt to embrace those values for themselves. Being a role model to your kids is important, but being an authentic model is even more important because, let's face it, none of us parents are perfect, but all of us can be real. "Where do you guys want to eat?" I asked. Speaking all at once, each of my kids yelled out their own favorite local fast food restaurant. It was almost unanimous. Everyone but Kelly chose the same place. We jumped in the car, and as we pulled out of the driveway, Kelly stated despairingly, "I can't believe we're going to that garbage can again." I quickly responded, "Kelly, I don't appreciate your tone or your language." I told her it wasn't nice to dump on the place her brother and sisters wanted to go to just because she didn't like it. In a more respectful tone, she cited her reasons for objecting, so we compromised. We agreed to drop off Sean, Katie, and Heather at the objectionable restaurant, and Dottie and I would take Kelly to her choice. As I pulled up to the restaurant to drop off our 3 kids, I said, "Everyone out for the gag bag." The younger kids didn't even hear my sarcastic remark. They were too excited about the French fries and burgers they were planning to order. As we pulled away for Kelly's choice of restaurant, she said, "Dad, you just did what you told me was wrong. What's the difference between calling a place a garbage can or a gag bag?" I could have said to Kelly, "The big difference, young lady, is that I'm the parent here and you're the child. I'm the one doing the correcting and you're the one being corrected." But I didn't. Kelly had me cold and I knew it. We were heading out for dinner, but I was going to have my own words for horse divorce. I swallowed hard and thanked Kelly for pointing out my inconsistency and the fact I was being hypocritical. Telling her to do one thing and me doing the other, I apologized. I wasn't a perfect model, but I was an authentic one. It's true, as dads, we should model all the virtues of godliness, but the reality is we are human and we blow it. We need to face up to our shortcomings, humble ourselves, and seek forgiveness. That makes us authentic models, the kind from which our kids can actually learn how to make amends when they mess up. Some would say that you show weakness when you confess your failures to your kids. If you let your kids correct you, they say it will encourage them to disrespect you. Much of this thinking comes from the autocratic parent who demands respect. I prefer to earn respect by demonstrating that my kids are highly respected themselves and have insights that are helpful to me. Another reason some feel you shouldn't be vulnerable with your kids is a misguided view of leadership. There are those who feel that God has set the father up as the CEO of the home, the absolute ruler of his family, and the king of the castle. They imply then that the dad is the model teacher, with his kids being his submissive students. In some cases, this kind of dad may even look upon his own wife as a submissive student as well. Jesus, however, made it clear to his disciples what real leadership was all about. They too had a misconception about being the head of something or having authority over people. Let's look at Jesus' expose of bad leadership and explanation of the good kind. He said, "In this world the kings and great men lord it over their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you it will be different. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like a servant. Who is more important? The one who sits at the table, of course. But not here, for I am among you as one who serves." Luke 22. Jesus was espousing a whole new concept of authority and leadership. The common view was that people submit to and serve leaders and those in authority. But Jesus' view was that leaders are to serve. He shared this revolutionary concept of how to lead during the Passover meal just before he gave his life for the church. John records him getting up from the meal and starting to wash the disciples' feet just as a servant would do. When he finished, he said, "Do you understand what I am doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow, and do as I have done to you." John 13. Applying these passages to fathering, how does a dad exercise his authority in his house? If we are to live out Jesus' view on leadership, then we are to serve the needs of our families. This concept of having authority, as described by Jesus, is difficult for many dads to grasp. It turns the idea of leading on its ear, so to speak. How do you effectively lead by serving? How do you call the shots by taking on the lowest rank? This approach is confusing if you try to implement it as a hierarchical structure for the family, but it really makes sense when you see in this light of developing an intimate relationship with your kids and spouse. As a dad, you ultimately want a love relationship with your kids in which they willingly allow you to guide and direct them, and you want them to be responsive and accountable to you. What better way to teach them accountability than openly demonstrating your accountability to God and in turn making yourself accountable to them? "Now you've really gone off the deep end, McDowell," you might think. But I tell you, there's perhaps no better way to gain your kids' trust, respect, and admiration than to ask them to hold you accountable. I started first with my wife, Dottie. No one respects and admires me more than the one who shares her life and her love with me, the mother of my children, my sweetheart, my best friend, and a special gift God gave me. And so I said to her, "Honey, I need your help. Will you hold me accountable as a husband and a father? If I'm on the road too much, tell me. If I'm not meeting your needs or the children's needs, spell it out for me. If I'm not spending enough time with the children or spending enough time with you, I want to know about it." "Okay, Josh," Dottie replied, just a little bit reluctantly. "I'll tell you, but sometimes it may hurt a little." "Honey, I know I'm probably going to get defensive sometimes, but when I do, you have the right to tell me that too. I want to hear the truth." But I wasn't through. When Kelly's 7th birthday rolled around, I put a special note in her birthday card from me. "Dear Kelly, I sure love you. I count it such a joy to be your dad, but you know I'm going to need your help this year. I've never been the father of a 7-year-old daughter before, and I just want to be the best dad I can be to you. And if you ever feel that I'm not doing right or not being fair or loving and considerate, please tell me." When Sean turned 7, I did the same thing with him. In fact, I've done it with all the children. With Katie, I said I've never been the father of a 7-year-old blue-eyed blonde before. And I did the same with Heather. Ever since I've asked them for help on being accountable, my wife and kids have become my best counselors. Kelly and Sean, for example, accepted my proposition with enthusiasm. The other kids have put in their 2 cents worth on many occasions. One time Sean and I were walking along the street downtown when a man stopped to talk to me. Something the man said irritated me, and I was rather short with him. As he walked away, Sean remarked, "Dad, you were sort of mean to that man. You didn't talk to him very nicely." I felt like dying right there on the street. We ran after the man, who was still in sight, and when we caught up with him, I stopped him. With my son standing right there, I apologized for my rude behavior. Once when I got back from a trip, I was approached by my 10-year-old daughter, Katie, who said firmly, "Daddy, you're not being fair to me." "What do you mean, honey?" "When you come home from trips, you take Kelly and Sean and Heather out, but not me." "Really?" "Yes," my 10-year-old said unflinchingly, and then she added, "Will you take me out for lunch today?" I was glad Katie had the freedom to hold me accountable by telling me she thought I was being unfair. I thought I had been spending enough time with her, but apparently she hadn't seen it that way, and I was more than happy to oblige her request for lunch. In fact, lunch became a big thing for Katie, and I made it a practice with her during all of her growing up years. Understand that making myself accountable to my family wasn't easy for me. I'm not suggesting that Dottie or any of the kids took advantage of my offer to correct me, but they also weren't shy about giving me some tips. Sometimes their critiques stung and I got defensive. Every time I became defensive, it caused them to clam up. And there went my greatest source of insight and help. So I learned that although there were moments when I had to choke on my pride as I swallowed it in big hunks, I did it anyway because I knew I couldn't get along without their help. When we as dads become vulnerable and real and admit we struggle too, we become a powerful model to our kids. The Apostle Paul understood about being authentic. He told the Christians in Corinth that he'd had a number of spiritual experiences he could boast about. But he said, "I won't do it. I don't want anyone to think more highly of me than what they can actually see in my life and my message." 2 Corinthians 12. In using his own life as a model for others to follow, Paul was not lowering the standard of living like Christ. In fact, he told the Corinthians, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." 1 Corinthians 11. His goal was to be a model of Christ's likeness, but he didn't put on a mask or try to position himself as some perfect leader. He was authentic and didn't hide the fact that he had weaknesses. Here is an example. "To keep me from getting puffed up, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from getting proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, 'My gracious favor is all you need. My power works best in your weakness.' So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may work through me. For when I am weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians 12. The secret to Paul's powerful leadership and positive role model was in recognizing and confessing his weaknesses so the power of Christ could work through him. That's where your power comes from too. Admitting you need help and asking your family to hold you accountable places you in a position for God's power to work through you. He knows your struggles and weaknesses, and fact is, so does your family. Trying to cover it up doesn't hide a thing. It is so much better to own up to your faults and ask for your family's help. Talk to your wife first. If you haven't already made her your accountability partner, tell her you want to know when you're messing up or when she senses you're about to. Then sit down with your kids and let them know you want to be the best dad you can be, but you need their help. I suggest you do this when your kids are around 7. Ask them to hold you accountable, and you might consider writing each of your kids a note to formally ask them to be your accountability partner. I think you'll find by doing so you will become truly an authentic model that God will be pleased with. To help, here are a few ideas you might want to consider if you write out a note with your request. Dear, child's name, I love you. I love your sensitivity, your honesty, your spirit, and caring heart. This note gives you permission to remind me when I'm not sensitive, honest, or caring. I want so much to be a better dad and friend to you. Forgive me for not giving you more of my time. I really want to be more in your life. This note gives you permission to remind me when I get too busy with other things, and please use it. Also, forgive me for trying to live out my life in you. Playing sports I never played, making grades I never made, being better than I ever was. I'm sorry for my unkind words, my impatience, and harsh spirit. I so want to be kind and loving so that you feel it from me. This note gives you permission to tell me to back off and give you some space. I need you to help me be a more patient dad, so use this note whenever you need it, and when it wears out, I promise to write you another one. I love you, Dad. Making yourself accountable to your family will draw you closer together so you can become a better guide down your kids' path. That is what commitment number 3 is all about. Doing your best to be an authentic model. End of chapter 5.